alongside this, he was incredibly intelligent, Taalay Bhai. He was, I'd always go to him for anything in terms of studies, because I wasn't particularly studious myself, wasn't that interested in academics. I was more interested in sport. And one thing that happened that I remember from my GCSE years, which I assume most of you are in year 10 now, so you'll be doing your GCSEs in the next year or two, was that in my English class in particular, and my history class, for some reason the department was really, really poor during my GCSE years. And we had a number of supply teachers and different teachers throughout the year who lost our coursework, amongst other things. And by the time it came to, and I know this isn't, you can't always use it as an excuse, you've got to take responsibility for yourself, but like I said, I wasn't particularly academically driven, so I didn't do too much work in those subjects. The night before my history exam, I came home and I was really anxious, really nervous, because I just felt I'm going to fail this exam. I have no opportunity, no chance of getting a good grade. And obviously you start to think about what your parents are going to say when you get your results and how disappointed they're going to be, and etc., etc. And I know that some of you might not always go to your parents when you have certain worries like this and when you want to open up and talk about certain aspects of your life. But I could always go to Taalay and talk to him about these things, because as brothers you tend to know each other a little bit more personally, especially when you're quite close to each other in age. So Taalay was at college at this point, and what he would do is that he would always go to sleep after college. He'd come home and he'd have an hour's sleep in his bed. And I didn't often go and wake him, but I was so anxious this time. I went and knocked on his door and he was half asleep, and I went in and I said, I'm really worried about this history exam. And he was like, I think he was half asleep, so he was just like batting it off, telling me not to worry about it. But then I explained to him the circumstances, and then all of a sudden he started to wake up and he realized, like, you're in trouble here, right? So straight away he told me to get my textbooks out. And he sat with me for about 4 hours, going through what I needed to do. He didn't go through the entire book because he knew that would be pointless and a waste of my time. He went through exactly everything I needed to know for the exam and what he knew would come up on the exam, because he'd sat his GCSEs recently and done really well on it, mashallah. He was an A-star student. And he talked me through it. And then when it came to 10 o'clock and he was going to sleep, he said, look, just before you go to bed and you're going to study for the next hour or two and cram as much as you can, focus on these things. So, I sat with him for several hours and then did some study myself, and I was up until the early hours of the morning studying. And I can honestly say, same with my English exams that he helped me with, that I learned more in that evening with Taalay Bhai than I did in the entire 2 years of GCSE studies that I did with my school. So anyway, somehow, thanks to the support and guidance Taalay had given me, alhamdulillah, on my results day I got an A in my history exam, and I was just as surprised as anyone else. And as I was about to leave school that day, my history teacher sees me and he comes over to me, and he's shocked, because I wasn't someone who was going to get an A. If I got a C, I think he would have been impressed. I know you do 1 to 9 now. So what's A these days? 7?
6, 7, 8.
6, 7, 8, around this. And what's a C? Like a 5?
4.
A 4. So I was probably like a 4 or 5 student, and then I came out with like a solid 8. And he comes over to me and he says, and he taught Taalay as well. He comes over to me and he says, how did you get an A? Like he was completely shocked. And I just turned to him and I said, Taalay sat with me the night before, and he took me through everything. And then he just nodded and said, yeah, that makes sense. Because he knew Taalay and he knew what he was like. And he said, yeah, this must be some kind of miracle. But then when I said, Taalay taught me the night before, he said, yeah, that's fine. That's a legitimate excuse. Now it makes sense.